Welcome to the Saranac Lake Effect Show. Good morning, Justin.
How we doing, Jeremy?
I am doing great, and it's cold outside, but it's always warm and sunny
Always.
at Cedar Street Studios. That's one thing I've noticed.
I was wondering, do we need to change the name of the studio to Inside the Lamps Studio?
Inside the Lamp Studio.
We've got our nice lamps that are never on.
Right. Well,
always,
we don't want to mess the lighting up.
Well, it's always bright enough from the sunshine outside.
Okay, very true.
There we go.
Yes.
All right, so episode 5.
Yeah, so far, I'm pretty pleased with the feedback we've received and the number of downloads as we've watched our stats over the weekend since we released episodes 1 through 4. What do you think?
I mean, this is, as we record this, we're 4 days out from dropping it, and we're at 130 some odd downloads. The advertisers are emailing already, asking if they can buy some time online.
Well, that was about 10 times more than I thought we would get. You know, I thought we would get some very close friends and family listening out of just kind of respect for us. And that was about it. Yeah. But it's been a couple more than that.
A couple more. Hopefully it wasn't just friends and family downloading it 50 times each.
Just to make us feel better.
And that could be it. We could just still be talking to each other for all we know.
Yes.
But no, I was glad to see. I had some messages from people in the town saying, "What is this? Where is this? How is this?" And I think it's great. You know, that was our whole purpose was to get a conversation going,
get it going,
and Saranac Lake today and tomorrow. So
yeah. Speaking
of that, what's our topic for the day?
Well, I think we decided to do a relatively short episode today, just us. We will have a guest next week. We're hoping, and then we've got in studio. We've got guests lined up for right after the holidays too, which is exciting. But so today is just going to be us talking again about short-term rentals. Yeah.
So typically we have our recap of the village board meeting. This episode is going to be essentially just about one part of that village board meeting,
right? And
we'll keep it short and really say that we are not taking sides in the issue. We are a platform for discussion. And again, as you mentioned, we have guests lined up. If people want to be a guest on the show, all they have to do is send us an email, or if you have our phone numbers, you just text us and say, "Hey, can I get on the show?" and tell us what you want to talk about. We'll line it up.
Send us a text, give us a call. Email is saranaclakeeffectshow@gmail.com. Facebook is another avenue for reaching out to us. And yeah, well, so
short-term rentals.
So there was a village board meeting again. Well, they have them every 2 weeks. Just this on December 12th, and they had a work session. This was the third work session they've held regarding short-term rentals, and there was a large crowd. The room was full of residents who wanted to. Most of them wanted to participate in the work session,
be a part of the discussion.
Yeah, and so what the board had a presentation ready that they wanted, to kind of keep the conversation going and recap previous work sessions. So I thought that it might be worthwhile to go over some of the things they shared in their presentation.
Sure.
Because I think what they're trying to do is set a framework so that there's agreement on here's the framework under which we're going to develop regulations.
Sure.
I think I mentioned last time from what I think anybody could gather from the village board, they are in unanimous support of regulations for short-term rentals. But now they're trying to figure out what exactly those should be.
And it sounds like they're trying to do this as opposed to a top-down approach. They want to go bottom up. They want to involve the community. They're putting this information out there. They're not doing this behind closed doors and saying, "Hey, guess what? Here's the regulations." They're putting this out there to discuss in open sessions
and explain how they got to those regulations.
Like back in back in elementary school, you did math. Show your work.
Show your work. You get here? Yeah, they're showing the work. That's a really good way to look at it.
So what's this framework?
So first I'll read these shared values.
Okay.
So and again, we're not, like we mentioned, we're not going to spend all day on this, but if you want any of these that you want to talk about, we can. The Saranac Lake Village Board and residents can work collaboratively and in good faith to balance the needs and rights of all residents. The Saranac Lake Village Board should do everything it can to protect residents from the external forces affecting housing access and affordability. Close-knit neighborhoods can provide stability and a high quality of life for village residents. Tourism should be used to build resilient local wealth and directly benefit village residents. Short-term rentals, when operated appropriately and leveraged by village residents, can provide great benefit to the community.
So those are, so in my professional life, I do a lot of work around behavior intervention with people who struggle with behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And a term we use a lot is operationalize your terms, meaning if someone says to me, hey, I'm working with this kid and they're out of control, that doesn't help me because I don't know what out of control looks like. So there's lots of words in there, lots of adjectives that are would need to be operationalized. I look forward to seeing how they do it. So, but the third one though, can you read me the third one again?
Close-knit neighborhoods, close-knit neighborhoods can provide stability and a high quality of life for village residents.
So there you go. So what do we mean by close-knit neighborhoods? What do we mean by stability? What do we mean by high quality of life? Those are things, not to pick it apart. I think that's a great principle it's a great part of a framework to pursue regulations around STRs. But I would want to see, I'm interested to see what, and we don't know, but hopefully we'll get some guests talk about it, what they mean by high quality of life, stability, close-knit, all this stuff.
Well, we could probably have a podcast about each one of these.
Sure.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, so that's what they talked about at the first work session.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the second work session, that's kind of the high level,
Yep.
The highest level. Second work session, I'm going to go through, and if they've changed these a little bit or something, I'm just going from what
This is as of December 14th.
Well, this is just from the second work session.
But we're recording this on the 14th, so if something changes,
exactly.
We'll put out a revision.
All right, number one. So these are objectives. So this would be the next level of specificity.
Yep. Okay, we're operationalizing.
Right. Track the number and location of STR units in the village.
Okay. Do we know about how many there are right now? I think I've seen that number before.
I don't remember. Okay. It's over 100.
It's not a large percentage of residences, though. Is
it's in the 3% range, somewhere. 2, establish all existing STRs as legally operating.
Okay. Again, define legally operating, but sure.
3, track and measure quality of life issues, such as noise, parking, trash storage and removal, and property maintenance village-wide.
There we go. That's some operationalization. Yeah, that's not the word.
I know what you mean.
Defining quality of life. I like that. Okay. Noise, trash, parking, all that. Good. Okay.
Limit the total number of STR units in the village. Basically have a cap. And in this version of their presentation, and I don't know if this has changed, but the number they've started with was 5% of total housing units.
Okay, so right now we're probably somewhere around 3%, and they're thinking of a cap of around 5%. So they're not saying somebody couldn't come in tomorrow and buy a place and turn it into an STR as long as they.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Generate revenues from STRs that shall be dedicated to addressing housing needs in the village of Saranac Lake.
So revenue meaning what?
What permit registration.
So now
if you get a permit from the village to operate an STR, there would be a fee associated with it.
Yep.
And that fee would go into
some kind of a
fund to be used for addressing other housing needs.
And I'd be interested to know how we're going to do that. So, everybody wants to know that. You pay your federal taxes, and you go, okay, am I paying for a $10,000 toilet in the Pentagon?
Right.
So where is this money going? Okay.
Create incentives for residents to turn vacant housing units into STRs as a way to cash flow redevelopment.
Read that again.
Create incentives for residents to turn vacant housing
Okay,
units
gotcha.
into STRs
Gotcha.
as a way to cash flow redevelopment.
Okay. So if a developer wants to come along and purchase a vacant house, turn it into an STR, that's better. That seems to be one of the crucial discussion points. I won't say arguments, is that you could easily say, and again, we're not taking sides here. You could say, don't turn this house into an STR. Well, if it's currently vacant and it's just a ghost neighborhood and there's no one's living there, it's just essentially rotting. Why not have somebody come and is it better to have some life going on there than it just sitting vacant?
Yes, and every single work session that they've had, there's been a discussion by board members and by members of the public about vacant housing.
Mm-hmm.
It's an issue in and of itself.
Do we know? I keep throwing questions at you, but this is what do we know? What percentage of homes in the village are vacant?
Yes, it's approximately 16%.
Okay.
Now that number includes seasonal residences. It includes seasonal residences and also abandoned properties.
So somebody owns, because near where I live, there's a house, very large, nice house that the people only live there in the summer. They plan to eventually retire here. When they're not here in the summer, they don't STR it. They have somebody maintain it, like caretaker, but they don't rent it out. So that
would likely be counted as a vacant property.
Okay.
As would the abandoned property.
Sure.
I mean, everybody in this village has an abandoned property
somewhere near them.
Yeah. So those would be in that same 16%.
Okay, and which is interesting because it'd be informative to know, because my neighbor is not, that they own that home, they're maintaining it, they're not STRing it, but when we're trying to figure out what percent is actually vacant, meaning no one lives there, no one's maintaining it, it's just sitting there. Okay, that number would be interesting to know.
Did I already read? Okay. Number 7, create opportunities for new residents with incentives for new construction of any kind, including ADUs, which are accessory dwelling units, into STRs as a way to cash flow redevelopment.
Okay.
That was it.
So
I think without to get to your point, I think the idea here is create a framework of some shared values, and then, in your words, start to operationalize things.
Yep. One more clarifying question. So if I don't currently have this situation, but if I were to buy a home and on that property, so I've got like a garage with an apartment above it, or I have a little small cottage on the same property. So I have my home I live in, but there's also on my same property is a smaller unit, whether it be a garage, whatever it is. Is that counted? Is that part of this as well? Or is it because it is all just, technically it's one residence? It's like I have my house and I have a garage at my house and I have an apartment above it. If I want to STR it, does that fall into this category?
Well, first, those are individual units. So no matter how they're used, it's not, you don't look at just the property, you look at each unit on the property.
Okay.
So let's see what number 7 says again, or 6. Well, if it's already operating, it's not vacant. So I think that's a good question. I don't think that's details there yet.
Nuances, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, which again, I think it's
part of the cap, I guess, right?
Sure.
It would be, is it legally operating today? Based on what they've had here, is it legally operating?
Yeah.
If so, probably be able to get a permit for it, and you just keep doing it.
Right. So, I mean, this obviously is a hot button issue because you've got people on both sides who, like every issue, you've got people in the middle, you've got people on the extremes. Some people that would say STRs are ruining the village. Other people who would say, nope, they're actually a great benefit to the village. And sounds like the village board is in the middle saying, we got to find out a way to benefit the village and not take away the rights of property owners.
That was crystal clear on Monday night.
Okay.
Yeah. And what was interesting was that on the first work session, there was a large group of residents who attended
Mm-hmm.
and spoke very passionately about their experiences with being pushed out of housing that was
Mm-hmm.
going from long-term to short-term
Yep.
rentals, not being able to afford housing in the village, whether it was to purchase or
Mm-hmm.
rent,
Mm-hmm.
and asking the village board to take action,
Mm-hmm.
that short-term rentals was part of this problem.
Sure.
And the board listened for a long period of time. They were very open and
Mm-hmm.
just let these folks speak.
Yeah.
Fast forward to the third work session, and the room was full of residents and owners of short-term rentals
Mm-hmm.
who were just as impassioned in their feelings about the matter.
Yep.
And the board again was very open and just let them speak
Mm-hmm.
and share their thoughts.
Well, I think I hope that we get, I would love, gosh, like it'd be so great if we could do something with our local high school students and have them, because this issue is not just Saranac Lake, it's around the country. And there's fewer and fewer models for civil discourse around issues in our country, in the world today. Everything is polarized.
Yes.
It'd be so great if we could somehow involve students and everybody, but I think it's such a great example. It sounds like the way the village board is going forward right now is it's a great example of hearing both sides, letting everyone feel like they've been heard, and then trying to come up with something in the middle that satisfies everybody. Nobody's trying to win here. It's how does Saranac Lake win is the question, and its current residents. It's
That's the trick.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what they're trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple, I think they're realistic. Somebody said we're not going to be able to make everybody perfectly happy.
You never can.
But they are listening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, both of these meetings were pretty long.
Yeah.
And everyone who wanted to speak was given that opportunity.
Well, I'm just going to rely on my experience because it's what I have. So when I do a lot of writing in my field, academic writing, and there's a rule in academic writing that you're never allowed to use absolutes. So you can't say all kids this or no families this. So it sounds like they're addressing this issue and they're avoiding those. I mean, because you can't say no short-term rentals. You can't say, all people can do whatever they want. So they're trying to find that middle ground. We're trying to walk that middle ground on this podcast right now, and not, because I truly I don't know enough about this issue to say I have an informed opinion. If I was asked to vote on this issue, I wouldn't vote on it right now because I don't know enough.
Right.
So I'm glad the village is doing it this way and sharing.
Yeah, and they've made it pretty clear that there will be future and multiple opportunities for the public to be engaged with this.
Sure.
And one way that this could have happened is that the village board showed up at a meeting and with a law written.
Oh yeah, top down.
And say, we're going to call for 2 weeks hence, we're having a public hearing. And then everybody can see this law for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, they put it on the agenda. They have a public hearing. Everybody says they love it, they hate it, whatever. The board sits there half asleep and then just votes on it and moves on.
Yeah.
They have not done that.
Right.
And from every indication, they will not be doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks volumes to their desire to try to get this right.
And again, why I want our high schoolers there observing this, because this would be a great course in civics. So, I mean, you brought up one thing that I wanted to just touch on real quick, this issue of long-term rentals being turned into short-term. And I'll just use one personal example myself. So I was, in the last couple of years, I was looking at a property and thinking of, do I want to maybe purchase this as an investment? And it's a unit, and it was 3 units, 3 levels, 1 on each level. And the person selling it obviously had multiple offers. And it came down to the question of, well, what are you going to do with this when you buy it? And are you going to maintain my residents who live here and let them long-term rent it, or are you going to just kind of wait till their leases run out and then you're going to short-term rental it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to do was just let the long-term renters keep doing long-term rentals and just kind of own it and use it as an investment. And I ended up, our bid was beat by another person. And I know that that person who bought it then did what we were afraid of, which was waited till leases ran out and then turned it into STRs. I bring that up because it's one of those issues where you can get really, that's a prime example of like someone could say, you know, this is wrong. And morally, I would say, I think it is morally wrong, but legally it's not wrong. You can do what you want with your property once you own it. So that was just a real life example I witnessed of it happening, where I saw firsthand that that playing out, which was interesting.
That is, and there are a lot of real life anecdotes that people can share, no matter where you are on this spectrum with short-term rentals. Let me just, and I know we're trying to keep this relatively short. I think it bears discussing for a second that there are a couple different reasons for having regulations that kind of got drawn out in the meeting. One is, and you have to look at them somewhat separately because they're trying to address two different things. First is nuisances. Do short-term rentals cause nuisances? Trash store, we read the one,
noise,
the objective,
trash,
all that kind of stuff. And does the village need to enforce that? What role do the short-term rental owners have in self-enforcement? All that kind of stuff. It's important. The other is the effect of short-term rentals on the availability of housing. Those are different things, both important. And I think that's something that going forward, I would hope everybody keeps in mind is let's talk about both of those things. And when the village is talking about regulations, they're not doing it simply because of the nuisance aspect.
Sure.
So, and because they're looking at it more broadly.
Yeah. How can we turn, not just how can we minimize negatives, but how can we use regulations to get positives out of this as well?
Right. And quite frankly, what they've said, which is what I mean, no, we're not trying to share our own opinions, but I really think this is important.
It's our podcast. We can do that.
Is they don't want to single out property maintenance and nuisance issues just on short-term rentals, because a nuisance is a nuisance, right? Trash, like, just blowing in the wind across anybody's yard, whether it comes from a short-term rental, a single-family home, or a long-term rental, is still trash blowing across your yard.
Yeah, noise is noise.
Right.
People who have single home.
If we have those issues, they need to be addressed.
Yep.
And it, from what I can gather, the village board is not in favor of singling out any one use when it comes to that.
Right.
So
makes sense. And there's opinions on this that we don't have yet, because we don't. I don't have yet because I don't know enough, and that's why I think we would love. Again, I think this is a perfect. It wasn't like we created this podcast to talk about short-term rentals. We created the podcast to say, let's talk about issues. This is the perfect example of why we have the podcast. Issues that are currently facing Saranac Lake, and how we're handling them, and how that's going to make Saranac Lake better into the future. You could not find a better example of it.
Yeah, so we're gonna stay on it. I hope we don't get everyone bored from it. We'll mix it up next week. Yeah, next week is a mix up.
Yeah, we'll change
right
it
after
up.
The holidays. We've got a mix up. Yeah, but we're gonna stay on this because it's really important.
Well, what I would hope is that people listen to this and they hear for the fourth or fifth time us saying we want to continue this conversation, but beyond just Jeremy and Justin. We want to have guests on to talk about this.
Yeah.
If we maybe I don't know, we have a guest on, two guests and one on each side of the discussion, as long as it remains civil, to the point where we'd say it's civil enough that high schoolers could watch it.
Right.
That'll be our bar for actually publishing it. So yeah, it's an important issue. But regulations, the last thing I would say is our first episode, we talk about the Saranac Lake Islands and camping. And I mentioned how back in the day, there was no regulation, and people were allowed to just kind of like claim land and put up camps and do whatever they wanted. And my family was one of those families that lost a camp when they did that, when regulations came down. Do I wish I still had a camp with water access? You betcha I do. Do I understand why regulations were necessary? Yes. So it's never easy. I can remember many holidays where my relatives would get a little heated about the issue of losing our camp. But was it really ours, or were there just no regulations saying so?
Right.
It's never easy. So we hope so. Please, if you want to come on and talk about this issue again, we kind of have the next few weeks of guests lined up, and we'll not be talking about STRs. But if you want to come on and talk about this, there's no qualification you must have besides having an informed, respectful opinion about the issue. And we'd love to have you on to talk about it.
So as a recap, how to contact us. If you have our phone number, great. Otherwise, SaranacLakeEffectShow@gmail.com and Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Reach
give
out.
Us a download on Podbean. Give us a thumbs up, likes, all that fun stuff. It does help get out there to more people. We're not making money off this. We're doing this because we care about Saranac Lake, and we're trying something. And I think this will be a great way to keep this conversation going forward.
Okay.
All right.
Till next time.
Next time.